Okay, I have 6 o'clock. Let's convene this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. Appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We've got quite a few things to go over tonight. I hope we can get through in time for our work session. First item of business would be to review the minutes from October the 16th, 18th meeting, I believe it was. Is there any additions, corrections, deletions to the minutes? Mr. Gully, you're recognized.
I'm sorry. I did ask a question when we were talking about the CARES Act funding there for the Senior Citizen Center. Did we get any information back on that one about how many people we were servicing in that?
I don't remember that question, but we're servicing about 30 people every month, basically one a day.
I had went in and talked to him about it, and that's about, it bounces shy up right at 30.
So the $44,500 to buy groceries was 30 people?
A month.
They're providing for them every week.
Thanks, sir. Motion to accept the minutes.
Do have a motion by Mr. Gully and a second by Mr. Harsh to accept the minutes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Approve those. Next item of business would be to elect officers for the coming year. We will be electing a chairman, a vice chairman, and a secretary. It seems as if our secretary has been unable to get here from her work in Nashville. You're not secretary, are you? Okay. So I was going to suggest, I wanted to first thank Amy, who is on the committee, for doing the minutes for us the last several times, and before we got into that, thank you for picking up the slack there. So we'll open the floor for nominations on chairman. Mr. Walsh.
Nominate you, sir.
We have a nomination of Mr. Jewell for chairman. Any other nominations? Do I have a second? Mr. Ford gets a second. Any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Mr. Ford?
Make a motion, nominations cease to be elected by motion.
We have a motion to cease the nominations and elect Mr. Jewell as chairman of Budget and Finance. Okay. We have a second by Mr. Clarity. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Next would be the position of Vice Chairman of Budget and Finance Committee. Open the floor to nominations. Mr. Gully.
Make a nomination of Mr. Ford. I believe he is currently vice chair. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Remain in that position.
You have a nomination of Mr. Ford. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Harsh. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Mr. Gully, you're recognized.
Go ahead and do it. Make a motion, nomination cease, and he's been elected by acclamation.
Have a motion by Mr. Gully and a second by Mr. Clarity that the nomination cease and Mr. Ford be elected vice chairman by acclamation. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is done. Position of secretary. Open the floor for nominations for secretary. Mr. Clarity.
Mr. Jewell, Ms. Batwood, would you be willing to do it?
Either yes or no.
I make a motion that Miss Amy Thomas as well.
I think she's declining, Mr. Clarity. Are there other nominations?
I've got nominations.
Who made the
sir.
nomination? Mr.
I'd like to
Burke?
nominate Bill Ferguson for secretary.
Thank you, but decline that, please.
Okay. Okay, he declined.
Thank you.
Mr. Harsh? She is. She said she would.
Yes, I am
Mr.
willing to do
Hart
this.
Makes the motion. Mr. Gregory makes the second. Okay, all in favor? Any other nominations? First of all, I'm sorry. Any other nominations? Last chance, last call. Any other nominations? Mr. Gully,
Make a motion that nomination cease and Miss Amy be elected by acclamation.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Gully, a second by Mr. Ford, that Ms. Thomas be elected secretary of this committee. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Like I said, thank you for doing it for the last however many times you've had done it. We appreciate it more than you realize. Do an excellent job with it. Next, we'll get into our county trustees reports and our financial summaries. Turn to about page 2 on the back side. We have our trial balance that was provided by the trustee ending October 31st, 2021. There again, this is not fund balances. This is cash balances. This is money in the bank. Are there any questions on it?
No questions or comment.
Yes, sir.
Looks rather good,
Thank you, Mr. Ford.
rather healthy.
Any other questions or comments? Have a motion to approve the trial balances provided by the trustee. Mr. Gregory makes a motion to approve it. I have a second. Mr. Clarity makes a second. Any further discussion or questions on it? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. You have also a comparison. This is one thing that we have asked for many times in the past, and I really appreciate Amy providing this for us, so that we know this month, October, versus October of last year. And as you can see, going down through it, on property tax, it is coming in better than it was last year. Our revenues on the other side of things are relatively the same, maybe just a slight decrease. Some of that, I think, probably is to be accounted for in some of the court fees, and also on wheel tax. I think some things of that nature has been a little bit lower. On the expense side, we're certainly very much in line, and like to commend the mayor and the department heads and Amy for trying to keep their thumb on this budget. That's kind of where we're at with the comparison. Any questions on it? Okay. We'll move on into our summary financial statement for October in the 101 General Fund. Of course, we're at the 4th month, and we're at 33.3% of our is the figure that we're comparing our percentages against. And of course, property tax began coming in October. A lot of people took advantage of the 2% discount in October, and I think it's been continuing also into November, is my understanding. Quite a few people trying to pay early to take advantage of those things. In looking over this, did anyone have any questions or see anything that's anomalous that they would like to have more information on? Total revenues, we're at 47.7%. Like we had said last month, once those property tax revenues start coming in, we'll start seeing those numbers be a little bit more toward the positive side. The 101 General Fund in the budget side, the expense side, we're at total expenditures of 30.4. There again, we're under that 33.3. So Is there any questions on the 101 in the expense categories? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into 111 urban services. Overall at 39.5. Property tax not quite as strong in the city as it was in the other, but pretty close. There again, expenditures well under budget right now at 24.5. Any questions on the urban services fund? Okay. 116 solid waste. We're at 53.5 overall on revenues, and expenditures at this point in time at the end of October were 22.8. Any questions on your solid waste? Mr. Gully.
I noticed that sale of recycled materials. Is that some of the cardboard we had been storing?
I believe it does contain some of that.
Well, if you want to clarify it further. I mean,
Well, you said you believe, you're not sure. Okay. That'd be a question I'd want to clarify. I mean, that number seems to have jumped quite a bit there.
It's not a department I look at every month. Cliff would be better to answer that one.
Understood.
I will say, Mr. Commissioner Gulley, I believe that is pretty much cardboard and plastic. That's what you see most sales of right now. So I think recover a little bit in those prices, and like you said, trying to get some of it off. So I think it's cardboard and plastic.
Any other questions on 116? Moving to 118, ambulance service. We're currently revenue side 43.9. And expenditures were at 28.1. Pretty good position to be in. Any questions on it? Move on to 121, CCA Core Civic. This is pass through. The money's in, the money's out. Also 122 drug funds, much the same. This is money that comes in from fines and forfeitures, and it's earmarked as to certain things that it can be spent for. A lot of times this doesn't, these tend to go out in big chunks toward the end of the year, typically, does it not? Any questions on either one of those? Okay. 151 debt service fund. There again, revenues is 81% of the total budget year, and expenditures at 19.9. Got a breakdown on the interest rate history that we've looked at. These interest rates are holding pretty firm. I think we had in September the lowest I think we've had in many years at 1.271, and bounced up a little bit, and that's to be expected, I think, with the inflationary cycle we're in. Don't know how much that's going to affect it, but it's bound to affect it some. Any questions on that? Yes.
We have any intention of paying any more on our debt this year? Other than this,
I believe all extra payments have been done for the year. We've paid off, is it 2 trash trucks this year? I can't think off the top of my head.
I believe, yeah, I think it was a roll off and a front loader.
Mhm.
I think typically we try to look at this at the end of the second quarter after we've kind of seen where we're going to be with our tax revenues, and so we can take advantage of it before the end of the year. Is that not correct, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I know a lot of these come due different times of the year, so kind of hard to look at and tell if they're planning on paying out anything else or not.
I think that's been one thing that we have been conscious of and trying to do over the last few years. To what extent it's hard to have a crystal ball and know what's going to happen into the future, and you don't want to spend the money out of the budget before you know whether or not you're going to have it in some categories before the end of the year. And we know, like we talked about the last meeting, that some things that we have, particularly gasoline costs, fuel costs, electricity costs, things of that nature, we may have to do some budget amendments toward the end of the year, because all of those things are really, right now, at least, tending to go up. Don't know whether they'll bounce back down, but right now we're certainly facing it in those categories, and likely to face it in others like we've had discussions with before. So hard to know what we're going to be able to do at this point in time. But I think we collectively, and I know the mayor is on board with that, trying to reduce this debt as much as possible, but to keep us in still a good physical position. Okay. 156 education debt service. There again, brunt of that is from the wheel tax. There again, most of our interest rate that we have is bouncing right at 1% right now, and with inflation bouncing at 8%, we're probably making money by one way to look at it. Any questions on it? Highway fund. There again, property tax is a bit of this. A lot of it comes in from the gasoline tax. That's the brunt of this this budget. We tend to run a month behind on the fuel tax, and so pretty close to the budgeted amount on the property tax so far. So I think that one will ease itself out, equal out in the months to come. Any questions on it? I think that's all of our financial reports. Is that correct? Any further questions? Any questions on any of that? Now that you've had a little time to look at those reports. If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve the reports. Mr. Clarity makes a motion to approve the report. Ms. Atwood makes a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It is done. Huh? In what respect? Yes, he's planning to touch base with. Yes. Next, move into budget amendments. I have several budget amendments. Most of them are in the 101 fund. Start out with those. 2022 101 16 FB. This is an increase. Animal shelter director's compensation. Mayor, let you explain that, please, sir.
Back in August, both of our staff at the animal shelter, that'd be our director and our part-time assistant, resigned at the same time. We did advertise this in the local newspaper. We only got one suitable candidate. He turned down the position, saying he can't take it for any less than $18 a month. So we put it back out there on Indeed and some other online platforms, and talked to some other people that were interested in it. Have had 3 other interviews. Two of those were good candidates. Both of them said they can't accept a position for less than $15 an hour. So that's the three real good qualified candidates we've had. We've had 3 or 4 others that applied that don't meet the requirements that for the position. So given that, we're asking if we can increase the pay from the animal shelter director. It's currently $12.50, increase that to $15 and hopefully hire one of these people so we can get some staff back in the animal shelter.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Walsh?
Why is there a state retirement? Is this a state job or it's county, but it's got state retirement? So I'm just questioning why that position will require a state retirement fund.
The county participates in the state's Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. So with 5% is what we pay into that fund.
Thank you.
Based on their total payroll, Mr. Daly.
So what's the job description here of this position? What does the day entail?
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
So what does this person's day entail as this job position here?
They process any animals that come in. One of the requirements we're asking is they have at least some vet experience, and some of them they'll do an initial examination of the animal. They can check it, see if it has any microchip in it, try to get it put out to someone. They'll take calls. That's mainly what they're going to do. If there's calls coming in, and try to divert those either to a rescue or a foster family, something like that. If we do have an animal inside, they'll, like I said, do an additional examination, set up any vet's visits, which we are required after 5 days. We can't do anything with the animal for the first 5 days after that. Right now, we're required to get them neutered, get other shots and vaccinations, and then we'll try to get those adopted out if we can. And then this position will also supervise a part-time person and coordinate any volunteer people, which we have had some said they would be willing to volunteer. So this person will coordinate all that, and they'll also work with the sheriff's department if they get any animal calls to see if they can get them resolved.
Increase, but I don't understand why we have to.
So is that a 40-hour-a-week job?
It is up to 40 hours a week. Yes, sir. That is what we budgeted on, is full-time, 40 hours a week.
Is that person clocking in 40 hours a week? Is what I'm asking. Or is it a normal 40-hour week? Do they come to work 7 o'clock? They're there for a certain amount of hours, is what I'm asking.
Our last one kind of did it after hours, even though I suggested they didn't have to. The animal control in Macon County, I believe their hours are from 8 to 4:30. I suggested this person try to set hours like that and work with a part-time personnel. So I've stressed to all the people I've talked to, I want to have set hours in any after-hours calls, unless they're emergencies, which are directed call to the sheriff's department, can be addressed the next day during business hours.
Any other questions? Commissioner Lawler?
Okay. When did this become a paying job? It used to be just volunteer.
Oh, 2 years ago,
I
3 years?
think
4
around
years.
June or so, 2018, you reorganized the animal shelter and created a full-time position there. It transferred over from under the sheriff's department to this position. I believe that actually went into effect in June of 2018.
Anytime you call out there, they have to make an appointment for them to come get even to come look at a dog or even come pick up a dog.
That was the previous staff. Going forward, I want them to have set hours, but they'll be at the facility taking calls there. So my intention going forward is if you call out there, you're going to get someone during business hours. After hours, you'll leave a message unless it's emergency. And if it's emergency after hours, they're directed to contact the sheriff's department, which is what the directions were before.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one? One thing, we have not paid anyone in September and October in this position, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Starting
Would
about,
would that money in the budget not cover this increase? Or is it this increase plus what they weren't paid to cover the increase?
no, this increase should cover all of it, but if, right now, you would have to take money from the part-time position to cover this person if you're going to go to the full 15 hours. So you would have a director working full-time with no ability to hire anyone to come in part-time. So you would have no one really, unless you can get a volunteer to do it, to cover weekends. So to preserve having a part-time personnel, we're offering to amend the budget, and then that should get you to where you can have a full-time director and a part-time assistant.
And we're not looking at doing any increase in pay on the part-time assistant, is that correct?
Right now, since I don't have a director, I'm gonna leave that up to all the other departments. That's up to the department head or anything to talk about raises for the employees. However, I will say that during the compensation study, there was an increase recommended, so I think that'll go through. As it's in front of budget and finance, there may be an increase there, but that's currently in front of the budget and finance since there is no department head.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Clarity?
On the, when you adopt the animals out, is there a fee, adoption fee or anything on that? And where does that money go to?
There is a 125 adoption fee and it goes into a reserve fund, so it can only be used for the animal shelter. So it helps to kind of pay for itself as you go along. Also, there is if you surrender an animal, there's a $50 surrender fee that also goes into that reserve fund. Plus, there's also usually there's donations to the shelter where sometimes it's food, sometimes it's other supplies, and sometimes people do donate money, especially in memoriams if you have someone that passes away. And that also goes into a reserve fund. In the past, we've amended the budget to pull that from that reserve fund to do improvements to the shelter or other supplies.
Looking on our report here, we've got right at $63,000 a year already stuck in this animal shelter. I don't see that I don't see why we need to put any more in it. Because I don't see how you can spend $63,000 a year on what's out there.
Well, you had a full-time director, you had a part-time person, we were paying to spay and neuter animals, which we also did get a grant from Sumner County Spay and Neuter. We were using to pay for that. Other supplies, there was travel expenses. Sometimes they traveled to Sumner County, something like that. There's been some animals they would take to the airport in surrounding counties and they'd be flown to the Northeast. So there was expenses coming out there. And there has been an increase in calls. We get them almost every day. And I know the sheriff's department gets them almost every day of people wanting us to come pick up animals. However, at this point, it is not empowered to go pick up animals, just accept them. But there is probably going to be some citizens coming to you wanting you to look at doing animal control outright instead of just animal shelter. But there is a lot of expenses to care for that animal as you go in there. I did a computation the other day based on we had 44 animals in the shelter last year. If you divided that up plus what we spent last year, it's about $1,400 per animal is what we spent.
Answer your question, Commissioner. Okay. More of a statement than a question.
Question.
Any other questions? Mr. Ferguson, you're recognized.
I guess I may be asking this of the county attorney or the mayor or both. Currently under state law, who's responsible for the animals or the animal shelter? Does that fall under the jurisdictions of the mayor's office, or where does that fall in terms of responsibility by state law?
My position is going to be it's up to the county attorney. If it's not under an elected official and it is a department of the county, it's going to fall under the mayor's office. And now that we do need to go back and make some updates to our administrative chart, which was passed when we first went to the county. There are some new positions and boards that have been created that are not provided on that. So the county attorney's already advised me going forward, we need to try to get that updated. So that's my stance on it. And if the county attorney's got something different, he's here to answer it.
Councilor Beller, do you have anything? Okay.
So follow-up question on that. What percent of being that this is going to fall under the jurisdiction of the mayor's office, and then the departments that are under in that jurisdiction, what percentage of our employees currently make $15? Do we have some that make less? And if they do you know what percentage that is currently? And I do realize that we're going to have a wage study come up. I understand that. But I don't want to be presumptive to think that it may or may not pass. I think that it probably will, but we still have a lot to look at on that. So my question is, do we have current county employees in the different departments here that make less than $15?
We do have employees who make less than $15, but this is also a department head position, and I can't tell you right now if any of the department heads make less than $15 an hour.
Any other questions? We have before us budget amendment. This is a fund balance draw, total 5859. This is to increase the compensation from $12 to $15 an hour for the animal shelter director position. I think we've had enough discussion on it. What's the will of the body? Mr. Walsh.
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Walsh makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Mr. Gregory makes a second. We do have a motion and a second to approve this or send it on to the full body would be the recommendation. Any further discussion? Okay, ready to vote? All in favor, please say aye. We want to use the, let's use the voting terminal, please. They're gonna mess you up. Give us a little bit of record. Give the public something to gripe about. Is it in? Okay, everyone cast your vote, please. All votes in. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the vote. Have 4 in favor, 6.
There's 5 yes, 6 no.
Yes, 5 yes, 6 no. Okay. All right. This failed to move forward to the full body. Will it? I guess it will go on. It will go to the full body. It just will not be recommended to the body. That's correct. I'm sorry. I'm trying to plow new ground here sometimes. Okay. All right. Next one would be BA, my list, 10117. This is the Veteran Services MOU, Memorandum of Understanding with Sumner County to provide services here in our county. And this is an amount based on $350 per day for them being here 2 times a month, beginning in January 2022. The mayor passed out a veteran service officer timeline tonight, outlining what he's done, what led up to this. And I know that we also have proposed having a committee be formed to look in the whole need of Veteran Service Office and make recommendations to the mayor and to the body as to what their recommendations would be. One does not necessarily preclude the other. I think we could go ahead and enter into this MOU. It absolutely has an ending date. I believe, Mayor, correct me if I'm wrong, a year after it's signed by
It's a
both
year after
parties.
a year after the final signature is added. However, it does have a clause that allows either parties, I believe, to end the agreement
It-
in writing.
30 days notice, it can be ended. So I think that's why I was saying it wouldn't necessarily have to do one or the other. We could do both, or we could do neither. That's up to y'all. Mr. Buckmaster, you're recognized.
Well, understand the committee to review this and the need for it, and I firmly believe in that. I also think this will bridge the gap and give that committee time to do an in-depth study to see what's needed. Therefore, I'd like to make a motion that we accept this.
We do have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion? Mr. Walsh makes a second. We have a motion and a second. Let's take further discussion on this. Mr. Gully, you're recognized.
Mr. Chambers, Mayor Chambers, you said that you believe it has a clause that it can be ended and terminated at any time with 30 days notice. You said that you believe it has a clause. Are you sure it has a clause that says it can be terminated at 30 days notice?
I'm 100% positive it's in here. I just can't tell you what page. If you gave me time to review it, I could tell you, but yeah.
Thanks, sir.
And I can tell you Sumner County, when I spoke to them, and there's also a representative here that was in the meeting with them from American Legion. They just want to assist us until we get to a point where we can evaluate this office to see which direction we need to go. And they're willing to assist us in any way we go. If we decide we want to end it, they're more than willing to do that, but they just want to assist us in any way they can. And this seems to be the best way to do it, to cover all their bases and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
I believe it's page 3 in general provisions. B, termination of understanding. MOU may be terminated will by either party with 30 days written notice. The only thing that I would question along those lines, Mayor, is that in 3 points of contact, it says that the mayor will be the point of contact. So is it going to be up to you to make the decision to terminate this if we see fit that it's needed, or I wouldn't want us to get into a word war of who has the authority to terminate something?
No, I believe I'm included in here mainly as a point of contact. Any decision to terminate that, I would not do that unilaterally. I would bring it before the county commission for that decision. Right now, my intention is to use them. If you see in here, there is a provision that on the 15th of the month, they'll send a report to my office about how many they've served and what kind of times they've spent assisting veterans. The whole thought of this was to get that information so during the budget, we can look at that and evaluate if this is something we need to hire somebody for Trousdale County or maybe do something further with Sumner County. So right now, this is just to get us through that so we can get good data on it, make an evaluation of that office, and then decide where to go when we're going in the next budget year.
Any other questions, commissioners? We do have a motion and a second on the floor to send this on to the full body. Mr. Ford? Plan to. Like I said, when I started out, one does not have anything to do with the other necessarily.
Commissioner Jewell, I think it's, at this moment, it's best to move them both forward. So we have both options available at the time that we feel, whichever way we go.
Well, that's my intention. Okay. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, let's vote on this one. Just a second. Okay, record your vote, please. All votes in. Anyone like to change your vote? Please record the votes.
10 yes, 1 no.
10 yes, 1 no. We'll move this to the full body for consideration. Next, we have fund balance draw 2022-101 18FB. This is an increase in the general sessions judge compensation. We received a letter from the administration of the courts. Based on the 2020 census data, we jumped a classification in our judicial system from 7 to 6. This results in an increase in pay for the general sessions judge, and it is retroactive until April 1st of last year. So we're having to come back and provide the funds to catch that up, plus up to now, and have enough money for this increase in salary going forward. If you look at if you had a chance to look at the associated paperwork that tells what it is, currently the judge's salary is, let's see, where is it here? I don't think that's the right sheet. Yeah, it was, we had budgeted it, what was it, 72,000, 76?
I believe he's budgeted around 72,000.
76, and we're gonna have
Okay.
to, this will go to a base salary of 99,000. So to make up that in the budget for the remainder of this year, and what we have to catch up, making it retroactive, it's gonna require a budget amendment of $54,000 plus dollars. And this will have to come out of your fund balance. Folks, we have no choice in this. We have to do this. Sir? Got to do it. Mr. Walsh, did you have a question?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Mr. Walsh, second by Mr. Harsh. Any discussion? Seeing none. Please vote. All votes in. Okay. Anyone like to change their vote? Record the votes, please.
11 yes.
Send that one to the full body as well. Don't have a lot of choice in it. Next is fund balance draw. This is in the amount of $17,984. Evidently, we will need to hold a primary for the judicial candidates. Both parties have requested a county primary in May. So this is to cover the cost of holding that election. We didn't put it in the budget because we have never typically done this. This will be the first year that we've had to do this. So that's why it was not in the budget. There again, this is one of those things that we can't say no to. Any questions? Okay, Mr. Walsh?
Make a motion.
Motion.
Make a motion to approve.
To approve and send to the full body. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Mr. Ferguson grabs a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Record your vote, please. All votes in. Anyone like to change their vote? Record the votes, please, ma'am.
11 yes, 0 no.
That one will move to the full body. Let's see, next one is Also, is this also fund balance draw? No, this one is where we're receiving 2 grants for county archives, 2022-101 20G. One was for office supplies and one is for microfiche equipment. This will be a total of $8,070. Basically, this budget amendment will bring that money into the budget from those grants. Mr. Ford,
Make a motion to approve.
have a motion to approve. Ms. Atwood has a second. Mr. Buckmaster, okay. Any discussion? Okay. Please record your vote. All votes in. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the vote.
11 yes, 0 no.
11 yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moves on. Next is 2022-101 21G. This is receiving funds for a grant for from GNRC for the senior center. This portion of this is to go toward salaries. This is part of Title III funding, and I believe we typically have this every year, do we not, Amy? Any questions on it? Mr. Harsh?
Move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Mr. Ford, second. Okay. Any further questions? See none. Okay. Record your vote, please. All votes in. Mr. Ford. There we go. I believe that's everyone in. Anyone like to change your vote? Record the vote, please.
11 yes, 0 no.
11 yes, 0 no. We'll move that one on too. Next is ambulance services, 2022-11801. This is EMS bonus pay. This will be coming out of local government support reserves. This was for the overtime portion of the EMS pay that was omitted from the bonus paid out in November 5th. This was discussed quite a bit, I think, and I think felt like the intention of the commission was that that bonus pay was to be equal to their normal 2-week pay, and this will make up that deficit that they did not receive. That's the basis of it. Any questions on it? Mr. Buckmaster?
Is this the actual shortfall, the average shortfall, or the estimated shortfall?
My understanding, it is the actual based on their estimates and the actual salaries based on a 28-hour average work week for those that sometimes it's 40 hours, sometimes it's less, and it typically averages out to about 32 hours a week. In the essence of fairness, they presented 28 hours a week to us as far as trying to receive this extra pay. Is that correct, Amy?
Somewhat. Would Mr. Beatty like to come up and explain?
Yeah. You should, do we not have a sheet on it? You should have a sheet. Did you get the sheet that you did? Okay, okay. Mr. Beatty, you're recognized, please, sir.
I believe Amy worked up both of those figures for 28 or the actual for the both ways. I think it's about about $1,000 difference one way or the other.
Mr. Buckmaster?
I'd like to make a motion to amend this amendment to reflect the actual shortfall, which appears to be something neighborhood at $10,142.65, making the employees receive their actual compensation they should have received.
Can I say something on this?
Yes.
So the reason why we went with a 28-hour average is because they're not necessarily losing anything. They did not earn whatever they were paid on November 5th. So EMS employees, and please, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, they switch every week from either a long shift or a short shift. The 28 average makes it fair for all employees of the EMS department. So this way, if you pay out what that second column is, you're going to have a set of EMS employees that get 2 long shifts and the other side are going to get 2 short shifts, so that you're actually shorting some of your employees in the EMS department. Does that make sense?
It does. If you look, say, just look at the last person there, you see that on the November 3rd, they would have been 299.04, but by doing the average, they're 523.82. If you look at the figures, some would have been less, some would have been more, but that was the average because of the long week, short week overtime is why came up with that. Is that correct, Mr. Beatty?
Right, so every pay period, 2 shifts will get a long check, will be 120 hours. 1 shift will get a 96-hour check for that 2 pay period. And the way it's going to fall this time is the shift that got the short check on the bonus check first initial direct deposit will also receive a short check the next time a check's issued. So they're going to get 2 shorter checks and then the other 2 shifts are going to get 2 longer checks. So you're kind of splitting the difference between letting the one that's going to get 2 short checks get a little bit more than they would had, and the ones that are going to get 2 long checks are going to get a little bit less than they would have. It's really kind of a marginal difference. It's kind of more fair, I guess, to say the average would be more fair for everyone than paying the actual.
Is
Mr.
this
Chairman.
going to make them happy?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty close to what they would have gotten either way. So I think they'd just be happy it's going to be pretty close to having what they normally would have made. I know it's kind of confusing on how our pay periods fall, but to get 2 short checks in a row is a little rough on some people.
Well, I think it was the intention of the commission to try to make this bonus bridge equal to what their normal 2-week pay is. Now, some people that bounces around, we know that. Some people do not have overtime as a part of their base normal salary. In this case, it did. And basically we had felt like that we had told these people they were going to get what their normal pay was, is why we're trying to correct this. Mr. Buckmaster, you have further questions about it?
I had no intentions of combining this with another 2-hour check. My point was, if they deserved 120 hours and you paid them 80, you pay them another 40 overtime separately. The other shift, I don't remember what you said that shift was. 96 hours, you paid them 80, you pay them another 16 hours separately. That way you made up the difference that you took away from them. When I voted for this, I voted for them to have the actual check that they earned. I even asked the question, what happens if somebody takes off a day during the week before? And the answer was, I guess they get an extra day's work, an extra day's pay. So I know I discussed it and I know what I want. And it doesn't include adding it to another 2-week check down the road. It means making up the difference of what we shorted them in the last check.
To be fair, there was not really, a loss is not a term that needs to be used with this. What they received on November 5th was a bonus. They did not earn that money. The money they earned ending on November 3rd is going to be paid out on November 19th. They're not losing anything.
And they're not going to realize that bonus until they terminate their career here in Charleston County, is when they'll get that check.
Chairman, question for Mr. Beatty. So this is sort of a blend, is it not? The 9120, is that sort of a blend to kind of get everybody on the same page where someone might have had a long week, someone had a short week? It's kind of a mixture.
That's correct. Yeah,
Okay, so it's an average is what you're doing there, right? So one person didn't just fall into that particular week that we're focusing on. They just fall short for them. Instead of that, they probably get a little bit more, and the one that fell to more will get just a little bit less, but in the end, they'll all get about the same because they alternate throughout the year. So if you look at it in that term, you're just getting the average, and that's what they're looking for.
That's what we felt was fair for everyone across the board to get a little bit more for the people that were going to get 2 short checks in a row versus the people that were going to get the longer checks. Because you're going to get 2 96-hour checks instead of your normal 96 and 120, but they would be certainly happy with the full pay either way. I mean, I know it may be a little bit difficult to swallow the 2 short checks in a row. I don't think anybody's going to argue as long as they get some of it.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay.
This was their proposal to try to rectify this, went back and did the average. Because that's what we had always talked about, what their average check was or what their normal check was. I think it was phrased that way at times. We were trying to give everyone equal to what their normal average check was, not just what their base of 40 hours is. Most people, they're at 40 hours. But there are some departments, particularly EMS, where their total compensation packages include a base pay and normal hours work of overtime. And this is what it will take to rectify based on an average that seemed to be acceptable to the department heads. But we can do whatever we will. We do have a motion by Mr. Buckmaster. I don't know that we had did we have a second? Mr. Ford. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is to make up for what on that one bonus check that we paid to Bridge, going from a check to a direct deposit to make up that amount of time is what that was for. Is that what?
I just have a question. It's
Yes, ma'am.
kind of a side note. Would this not be this affect like law enforcement as well? I mean, if we're, and I'm not opposed to doing this. I'm just saying, would this not affect some of the guys on law enforcement because their hours fluctuate too? Just a question.
That question was raised. I think the answer that I received, if I remember correctly, was they have not questioned what they received or asked for anything additional. I did talk to the sheriff about it, and he had indicated that it would be relatively minimal, that it wouldn't be anywhere near the amount that we're.
I just know if we do it for
I agree 100%.
them, it's not fair to do it for law enforcement. I mean, that is correct. I mean, if you're doing it for EMS or if you do it for law enforcement, how many other departments are we affected?
That was my question initially, and we were told that the egregious one, the only one that it had been an issue or anyone questioned was EMS. Is that correct, Mayor? I think that was what was asked in steering. Do you have any further input on that?
The only department that's contacted me about it was EMS. I don't know if you do this, if you might have some other ones that ask for it, but as of yet, only the EMS has brought it to my attention.
I'd like to be clear on where I'm at on it. I agree with you 100%. EMS, from my understanding though, is one of our EMS and maybe the law enforcement are the only two that work on an expected overtime weekly or monthly salary. That's the only reason I brought that same up last week. I'm appreciative to know that the sheriff says it doesn't seem like there's very much of that in the same category as the EMS. So we're not talking about just overtime here. We're talking about normal overtime. This is normally part of their regular pay. It's just how the shift works. That's what we're seeing here in this case. I think that's why we talked about law enforcement. I understand others might want to get some overtime. They've had it here and there every now and then, but that's not a normal part of their pay.
Probably my recommendation would be that we address this issue with them. If there are other issues, we can come back and address them at a later date with any of the other departments that have this. Certainly, it was not our intention it's our intention to try to correct a shortfall. And if there's other departments that have this, we certainly want to address it as well. I don't think anyone was trying to leave anybody out. And I know that question was raised, and I think it will be looked at, I'm sure.
That was my only thing. I just, if we approve it, and I'm not saying, I'm in agreement with it. I mean, I'll say that, but I think we need to make sure that the others are observed as well if need be.
Okay. I think that's well noted. I think we can check into that. Mr. Ford?
What is your motion?
Mr. Buckmaster's motion was to approve the $10,142 amount, which is does not average this to a 28-hour average. I'm not sure that was based on the ending payroll on November 3rd, not an average payroll. So there were some people in those figures that were on the long week cycle and some on the short week cycle is why the discrepancy. The other one would make it to an average. Did I explain that, Mr. Buckmaster, what your intentions were? Okay. And that was his motion, was to approve the larger amount. There again, you're going to short some people. It wasn't really supposed to be based on what their November 3rd ending payroll was. It was supposed to be on a normal customary average check. So you're kind of throwing that out the window. Are we going to go back and redo everybody based on what their November 3rd payroll was? What if they only worked 20 hours a week that week? That's the questions that have been raised, and that's one reason we were trying to do it this average way. I have a motion. Is there a second? If there's no, I don't have a second yet. Okay, we do have a second. Okay. The motion is to go with if we go with this dollar amount, are we going to base everybody on that November 3rd payroll? Is my question. If we do, there's going to be some people that are shorted and some that are receiving substantially more than others. But what y'all want to do? Okay, we do have a motion. We do have a second. Mr. Gully.
Let Mr. Ford go first. He looked like he had his hand up there.
Mr. Ford, I'm sorry. Did you have something else to say?
I thought you said this equally all else for everybody.
That's what we were, no. The 28 does. The original, what is proposed, the 9,120 takes the average with long weeks and short weeks.
My question was, if we vote no on this, we can bring back up the other. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, what you're having is some employees on November 3rd, that was their long week, so they did 120 hours, and another ones did 96. If you do the 28-hour option, everybody's getting compensation for 108 hours. So yes, some are going to lose some, but some others are going to get an increase. So that's just what it is. You're, instead of getting 96 or 120, everybody's getting 108.
Commissioner Jewell.
That was why we were trying to average it out.
So Mr. Beatty may help us the best here. So in the 12-month span, some people are going to have half the year longer weeks, half the year shorter weeks. So at the end of the day, it all averages out. Okay.
Yeah, we do have a motion and a second to go with, base it, I guess, on the November 3rd. Is that your motion, or was it just a dollar amount motion?
My motion was to accept the actual pay they should have gotten, which is the $10,142.65. That's my understanding. Each of those are based on who worked the 120 hours and who worked the 96 hours. If that's incorrect, I don't understand this paper, but that's what I asked Mr. Beatty for.
I think you're a little incorrect. That column, that figure, that 10,142 was based on that 2-week pay period ending November 3rd. If you'd based it on November 3rd and the pay period before, and then average those two together, you would be closer to the figure in the right-hand column. Some people lose on that specific pay period of November 3rd. We never, ever, that I recall, said that we were going to base it on the November 3rd pay period. It was always to be their normal salary, average salary for a 2-week period, that they were going to get an equal check equal to what their 2-week period is. So some of them in that column are receiving more, some are receiving less, but that is not an average. That is strictly that one pay period. And if you want to take it back 2, or you want to take it back 3, or you want to take it back for a quarter and see what the average would be, you're probably going to come up closer to what that right-hand column is. Mr. Buckmaster.
So I understand what you're getting at. If it's okay with Mr. Ford, I'd like to rescind my motion.
Okay. Okay. All right. We do, I will accept that. Mr. Harsh.
Move to accept this budget amendment as written here.
I do have a motion to accept the budget amendment for the $9,120 based on the average. Mr. Gully. Mr. Gully makes a second. I do have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Gully. Any other questions? Okay, please record the vote. All votes in. Anyone change their vote? Please record the vote.
10 yes, 2 no, 1 absent.
Okay. Does pass. We'll move it on. If we have further questions about this, we certainly can take them up next Monday night. If you're a little unclear on it, please try to get with Mr. Beatty or myself. Yes.
How did we go from all the other votes to 11? That's when we got.
We were
13.
11. We came up with 12 that time.
Well, we actually came up with, 12, 1 absent, so.
Your student rep came in.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do what? What?
Ethan came in.
Oh, okay. So it's 11. Okay. Okay. All right. I think that concludes our budget amendments. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Beatty. Discussion items, we had down here compensation study implementation. I think we're running quite a bit over. Is that something that we need to take up tonight, or do we want to, Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend you do this in January. That way we can have the consultants here to answer any questions you have. And Miss Amy is working on the 3 options that have been discussed, kind of a projection of what those costs are going to be, but we weren't able to get that together in time, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay, we'll move that to the next meeting with no objection. Mr. Clary.
Well, this is another subject to bring up. It came out of the Parks and Rec that we would send to Budget and Finance to find ways to pay for the poles. That's not in here anywhere. I thought that was supposed to be on this month's agenda.
I believe it was. Just overlooked it. Yeah, was recommended by Parks and Rec to fund the polls and some other things. We were going to look at trying to explore ways to pay for that. I think really what needs to happen before it comes to budget finance is you and I and the mayor get together and see if we can figure out some funding source and give you all the options of how you want to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I would say right now, we've got some of the governor's local support grant left. However, I'm currently researching the way that we can use some of the American Rescue funds to do ventilation system improvements here at the courthouse. And then that would free up some of that governor's local support grant, which does not have strings on it. And it might be able to be used for the lights and everything at the park. So right now, we're still trying to get that straightened out as to what you can use American Rescue funds for. The initial thing I've got is if we can say these ventilation systems improvement are for a congregate setting and it's a public building, which all our boards, commissions, everything meet here, talking about moving election commission here, upgrade these systems, which don't even have filters and have water standing in them. I think we can use those American Rescue funds to pay for that project and free up those governor's local support grant to do the poles and stuff in the park. However, I haven't gotten a firm answer on that. And if we use those funds in a way that Treasury 6-8 years from now comes back and audit us and says we used it incorrectly, we have to pull from our funds to pay them back. So we're trying to make sure we nail that down before we recommend anything on that.
Well, we were trying to get this figured out before spring. We was wanting to get a lot of this done this winter.
Yeah.
But we need to get some money somewhere
Right.
to get started on this.
We'll look into it and see if we can find the best funding source or give you some options of funding sources. I think is what we're looking to do. Come to our agenda, public comments. Anyone in the public in our audience like to make a comment about any of the business we had today?
When y'all vote,
Get the microphone.
when y'all vote, she announces how many yeses, how many noes, but there's nothing up there that shows that the public can see back here or can see on TV or on phone or whatever. Is there something that maybe could be done? The vote don't show. I understand.
Can get that happening. It will take me a little bit to get that smoothed out. There's a lot that I would have to, it's a lot that I would have to do in order to get that on the monitors.
Okay.
But that is also why I'm announcing what the vote count is.
Yeah, I know. I believe you and everything, but there's some people that might not. So.
Well, I know that's one thing that we had talked about that the system is capable of. It's just trying to figure out how to do it expeditiously and quickly has been the issue, but we're still working on that. I know that sounds like an excuse, but that's the facts.
However, there is a printed record that is.
I was
that is
gonna
part
say,
of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a printed record with exactly that count for those.
There will be a
those to look
printed
at.
record that's available, how everybody voted by name.
And I shouldn't just say printed. I believe you put that on, was that put on the website?
Yes,
That should be on our website, on our committee meetings as well.
it does, it has, it did. The thing, it can't be there immediately. We can't put it there tonight. We have to put it on the website. I think after our last commission meeting, it was actually on there the next morning. It wasn't immediately after the meeting, but it was by the next morning. Anything else? Any public comments? Seeing none. Mr. Walsh?
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Mr. Ford grabs a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, well, let's convene our next meeting in about 5 minutes. Apologize for starting our work session a little bit late. We'll start at 7:20. 7:15 right now. We'll start at 7:20.